Hello, this is land transport information at Toronto Airport. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. Toronto Airport next week, and I need to get to a town called, Milton. Could you tell me how I can get there?
Milton, did you say? Let me see. I think that's about 150 miles southwest of here. In fact, it's 147 miles to be exact. So it'll take you at least, say, 3 to 4 hours by road.
Wow, is it as far as that?
Yes, I'm afraid so. But you have a number of options to get you there, and you can always rent a car right here at the airport, of course.
Right. Well, I don't really want to drive myself, so I'd like more information about public transport.
Okay. In that case, the quickest and most comfortable is a cab, and of course there are always plenty available, but it'll cost you. You can also take a Greyhound bus, or there's an airport shuttle service to Milton.
I think for that kind of distance, a cab would be way beyond my budget. But the bus sounds okay. Can you tell me how much that would cost?
Sure. Let's see, that would be $15 one way, or $27.50 return. That's on the Greyhound.
Ah, that's quite cheap. Great. Whereabouts does it stop in Milton?
It goes directly from the airport here to the city center, and it's pretty fast. But you have to bear in mind that there is only one departure a day, so it depends what time your flight gets in.
Ah, of course. Of course. Hang on. Oh, we're due to get there at 11:30 a.m.
Too bad. The bus leaves at 3:45, so you would have quite a wait, more than 4 hours.
Oh, I see. Well, what about the shuttle you mentioned?
Okay, that's the airport shuttle that will take you from the airport right to your hotel or private address. It's a door-to-door service, and it would suit you much better because there's one every 2 hours.
So how much does that cost?
Let's see. Yeah, that's $35 one way, $65 return. So I guess it's a bit more expensive than the Greyhound.
Oh, that doesn't sound too bad, especially if it'll take me straight to the hotel.
But you do need to reserve a seat.
Okay. Is it possible to make a booking right now, through you?
Sure. Okay, I just have to fill this form out for you. So what date do you want to book this for?
The 16th of October. Oh, no. Sorry, that's my departure date. I arrive on the 17th, so book it for then, please.
So that's the Toronto Airport shuttle to Milton. And this is for just one person, or?
Yeah, just me, please.
Right. And you said your expected time of arrival was 11:30? So if I book your shuttle for after 12, let's say 12:30, that should give you plenty of time to, collect your baggage, maybe grab a coffee.
Yeah, that sounds fine, as long as we land on time.
Well, we'll take your flight details, so you don't need to worry too much about that. Now, what about the fare? What sort of ticket do you want? One way or?
Yeah, that'll be fine, provided I can book the return trip once I'm there.
No problem. Just allow a couple of days in advance to make sure you get a seat. And what is your name, please?
Janet Thompson.
Is that Thompson spelled with a P?
No, it's Thomson.
Okay. And you'll be coming from the UK? What flight will you be traveling on?
Oh, it's Air Canada flight number AC936 from London Heathrow.
Right. Now, do you know where you'll be staying? We need to give the driver an address.
Yes, it's called the Vacation Motel, and I think it's near the town centre. Anyway, the address is 24 Kitchener Street. That's Kitchener Street.
That's fine. Right, so that's $35 to pay, please. Have you got your credit card number there?
Yes, it's a Visa card, and the number is 3303-8455-2045-6837.
Okay. Well, that seems to be everything. Have a good trip, and we'll see you in Toronto next week.
Yes, bye. Oh, thanks for your help.
thank you all for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about PS Camping, let me start by giving you some background information about the company. The company started 25 years ago. It actually opened as a retail chain selling camping equipment, and then, 20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays. The company grew rapidly and has been providing holidays in continental Europe for the last 15 years. If you book a camping holiday with us, you'll have a choice of over 300 sites. In Italy, we now have some 64 sites that we either own or have exclusive use of. France is where we have the majority of sites, and we currently have a project to expand into Switzerland. We also have a number of sites in northern Spain, particularly in the mountainous region of Picos de Europa. We've upgraded all these Spanish sites and improved them considerably from their original 3-star rating. We believe our holidays offer superb facilities for the whole family. Parents who want their children to be fully occupied for all or part of the day can take advantage of our children's activities. These are organised by our well-qualified and enthusiastic staff. Each day kicks off with a sports match, perhaps football or volleyball, followed by an hour of drama for everyone. This may include singing or dancing, mime or other activities. In the afternoon, there's a different art activity for each day of the week, including a poster competition or model making. What's more, our sites are truly child-friendly, and with this in mind, we operate a no-noise rule in the evenings. Children's evening activities usually finish at 9:30 or occasionally 10, and from 10:30 holidaymakers are expected to be quiet in the areas where there are tents. We want nothing to go wrong on a PS camping holiday, but if it does, we also want all our customers to be insured. If you haven't organised an annual insurance policy of your own, you'll need to take out the low-cost cover we offer, and we require that you arrange this when you make your holiday reservation. There are many advantages to choosing PS Camping and to recommending it to others. As a regular customer, you'll be kept informed of special offers, and your friends can benefit from 10% off their holiday, or book a luxury tent for the price of a standard one. In return, we'll send you a thank you present, which you can choose from a list of high-quality items. When it comes to our tents, these are equipped to the highest standard. We really do think of every essential detail, from an oven and cooking rings fuelled by bottled gas to mirrors in the bedroom areas. If you don't want to cook indoors, you can borrow a barbecue if you ask in advance for one to be made available. And there's even a picnic blanket to sit on outside your tent. Inside, a box of games and toys can be found, and children's tents can be hired if required. All tents have a fridge, and if you want to spend the day on the beach, for example, ask for a specially designed PS Camping cool box, which will keep your food and chilled. There are excellent washing facilities at all our sites, with washing machines and clothes lines in the central areas, along with mops and buckets in case your tent needs cleaning during your stay. All sites have a cafe and or a shop for those who'd rather eat in than dine at a local restaurant.
Well, you've both been looking at different styles of managing individuals in companies and the workplace. How's the research going, Philip?
Well, I've been looking at why individual differences are such an important area of management studies. When you think about any organisation, be it a family business or a multinational company, they're all fundamentally a group of people working together. But it's what these individuals contribute to their places of work that makes you realise how important they are. Of course, they bring different ideas, but it's also their attitudes and their experiences of learning. Diversity is important in these areas too.
So why do people behave so differently from one another at work?
There are lots of reasons, but research has shown that a lot of it comes down to personality. And the other factor is gender. It's a well-known fact that men and women do lots of things in different ways, and the workplace is no different.
Did you look at the effects of this variation on companies?
Yes, I did. On the positive side, exposure to such diversity helps encourage creativity, which is generally an asset to a company. But unfortunately, individual differences are also the root of conflict between staff, and they can lead to difficulties for management, which can sometimes be serious.
Thanks, Philip. So now I guess the two main things to remember here are to identify individual talent and then to utilize it. So, Janice, you were looking at identifying different talents in workers. Do you think this is easy for managers to do?
Well, currently, teamwork is in fashion in the workplace, and in my opinion, the importance of the individual is generally neglected. What managers should be targeting is those employees who can take the lead in a situation and are not afraid to accept the idea of responsibility.
That's true, Janice, but unfortunately many managers think the entire notion of encouraging individuality amongst their staff is far too hard.
Yes, that may be true, but I think one of the most important tasks of managers is to consider the needs of the individual on one hand and group cooperation and conformity on the other. It requires creative thinking on the part of management to avoid tension.
So, Janice, what kind of people do you think companies should be looking for?
Well, it has to start from the very beginning, when companies are looking for new employees. When the personnel department is choosing between applicants, they need to look for someone who's broken the mould and can think for themselves. Instead, people making these decisions often use a range of psychological tests to see if a person is a problem solver or will do as they're told. I'm not convinced these qualities are actually the most important.
So, do you think being a good team player is overrated?
No, it's not overrated. You do need to learn the rules and learn them fast. No individual can get around this if you're working in an organisation.
So how should managers deal with this?
Rewards. When an individual demonstrates the behaviour the organisation expects, some kind of incentive can be given. What's important here is that this happens right at the beginning, so new recruits learn the rules of the system immediately. Also, the incentive should be something the individual actually wants, and this isn't always just money.
To come back to you, Philip, you were saying that recognition of good performers is essential. Now, what else should managers be looking for?
Well, managing people means you not only have an understanding of your employees, but you also recognise the culture of the organisation. In fact, for some, creativity and individuality may be the last thing they want to see during working hours.
Very true.
Yes, but managing people isn't as easy as it looks. For example, change in the workplace can be quite tricky, especially if there's a need to increase profit. And at times like these, managers may have to give priority to profit rather than individual staff needs.
Yes, and that creates difficult situations for people.
Yes, but what's important is that managers are able to deal with quite high levels of personal stress. During times of change, they should be thinking not only about the strain on their staff, but take time out to think of themselves.
Absolutely. So, what are the implications of that?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the first seminar in preparation for our archaeological fieldwork in Namibia. We are fantastically lucky to have received partial research funding for this trip from our institute, so I shall expect 200% attention and participation from you all. First, in this seminar, I'm going to give a brief introduction to contemporary research on rock art. And in the second part, I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts for our fieldwork trip in April. So please listen very carefully. I'm first going to focus on the interpretation of rock art in Namibia. We are very fortunate to be going to an area where you can find some of the most important sites in the entire world. And I hope to show you how easy it is for everyone to make mistakes in looking at cultures which are different from our own, the first and most important lesson we have to learn. In Namibia, there are both paintings and engravings. That's where the surface of the rock is cut out. Many of the engravings show footprints of animals, and most scholars used to think that the purpose of these was simple and obvious. This rock art was like a school book with pictures to teach children about tracks, which track belonged to which animal, giraffe, lion, and so on. But there were some mysteries. First, when you look at a typical Namibian painting or engraving, you see the tracks are repeated. There are dozens of tracks for the same animal. Well, you'd expect just one clear illustration if the reason, the aim was to teach tracking. Now, there were two more problems. Why are some of the engravings of animals very accurate, as you'd expect, all clearly identifiable, and others quite unrealistic? And another mystery. Some of these unrealistic animals, that's in the engravings, seem to be half human. Some, for example, have got human faces. Many researchers now think that these were pictures the wise men engraved of themselves. They believed they could use magic to control the animals they had drawn, so the hunters could then catch them for food. This shows you some of the dangers of coming from one culture to another, as we'll be doing, without understanding it fully. Scholars imagined that children looked at rock art pictures to learn to track, just because they themselves had learnt skills from pictures. Many researchers now believe that rock art had a much more complex purpose, and we'll talk more about it next week. Now, before I invite you to join in a discussion in this second part of the seminar, I'd like to make some very important points about our fieldwork, and in fact any field trip to look at rock art. We're going to a number of sites, and we won't all. The single largest problem faced by people who manage the sites is, yes, I'm sure you've guessed, damage caused by visitors, even though it's usually unintentional. Whenever you do go to a site, don't forget you can learn many things from observing at a distance, instead of walking all over it. This can really help to reduce visitor pressure. People often say, well, there's only 2 of us, and just this one time. But maybe thousands of people are saying the same thing. And then some basic rules to guide you. We'll have our own camp near a village, but remember never to camp on a site if you go on your own. It may be disrespectful to the people of that culture, and certainly don't make fires, however romantic it may seem. It's really dangerous in dry areas, and you can easily burn priceless undiscovered material by doing so. So, how are we going to enjoy the rock art on our field trip? By looking at it, drawing it, and photographing it. Never by touching it or even tracing it. Rock art is fragile and precious. Remember that climbing on rocks and in caves can destroy in a moment what has lasted for centuries. So, no heroics in Namibia, please. Try to be extra careful and help others to be too. Oh, and lastly, please don't even move rocks or branches to take photographs. You should leave the site intact. I'm sure I can rely on you to do that. Well, that's about all I want to say before today's first discussion. But if you have any questions, please ask them now. Oh, and don't forget you'll find some fascinating information about worldwide sites on the internet. Right, first question then.
Homestay Language Learning, Lisa McDowell here. How can I help you?
Hello, my name's Dan.
Hello, Dan.
And I'm going to be living with a family in Edinburgh for 3 months, so I'd like some advice on what to bring with me. I'm flying in via Singapore on the 15th.
Right. Well, perhaps most important of all are your documents. Vaccination certificate, sponsor's letter, and the certifying letter from us for immigration.
Yes, I've got all those in order, I think. What I'm really wondering about are money and clothes and things for my room. The personal effects, in other words.
Okay, let's start with cash. You'll already have money in your bank account here, of course, but make sure when you get here you have some cash on you. Pounds, that is, not euros or dollars.
How much do you suggest?
I'd say 50 as an absolute minimum.
Okay. Now, the next thing is which clothes to bring. What do you think?
Well, as I'm sure you know, it can get pretty cold here, so you will need some warm clothing. There are shops near here that sell winter clothes quite cheaply, so you really don't need to bring much. Do make sure, though, that you have at least one thick sweater and a jacket with you when you arrive here. The temperature's likely to be a lot lower than in Singapore.
Oh, thanks for the warning. Now, something else I'm not sure about is whether to bring my computer. It's a laptop, so it won't take up much room.
Two problems. Firstly, it might not be compatible with the electricity supply in this country. And secondly, there's a risk of it getting broken in transit. Someone travelling here had hers smashed only last month.
But surely I can carry it as hand luggage.
Usually, yes. But because of all the tight security right now, you may have to check it in. So my advice is to leave yours at home.
Okay, I think I will. Is there anything else you'd advise against bringing?
Well, you won't need household or cooking things. They'll all be provided. And importing food, of course, isn't allowed by customs, though I imagine you already knew that.
Well, yes.
But there are one or two things I'd suggest you find room for in your suitcase.
Yes?
Perhaps a few of your favourite cassettes or compact discs. Of course, you might be able to find them in the shops here, but then again, you might not.
That's a good idea. Anything else?
Yes. Some photographs of people and places that are special to you could be nice. They can really make your room feel like home. It's just a thought.
I'll see if I've got a few good ones.
Just a few points about packing. Make sure all your cases are clearly labelled, in English, with your host family's name and address. Just in case they go missing on the way. It has been known to happen.
What name do I write, by the way?
It's Wark. Lewis and Amy Wark.
So that's W-A-L-K?
It's actually W-A-R-K. But we'll be posting full details to you later this week.
Right, fine. And I'd better put some essentials in my hand luggage, enough for a night or two in case, as you say, anything happens to my main cases.
Yes, I'd recommend a change of t-shirt and socks and so on, plus any medication you may need, and a toothbrush, of course.
And my tights.
Your tights?
Yes, for the flight. Wearing them helps prevent deep vein thrombosis when you're flying long distances, not getting any exercise.
Oh yes, I've heard about that. Now, talking about exercise, there's one last thing. When you've packed your baggage, check you can carry it, all of it, at least 500 metres without any help. You may have to do that.
Okay. Well, thanks for all your help. You've cleared up a lot of points.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a safe journey, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Student Times, the programme with all the latest on what's happening at universities around the country. Today we'll be discussing disabled applicants and the kind of support they can expect to find, or not find, at the university of their choice. With me to tell us more is Student Disability Advisor Sally Taylor. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Hugh.
I'd like to start by pointing out that although 1 in 4 people has some kind of disability, the proportion among students is much lower. This is partly because most students are under 25 and many people only develop their disabilities as they get older, but it's also because some universities don't do much to encourage access. It is true, though, that some have quite sticky problems when it comes to, for instance, wheelchair access, ancient buildings, cobbled streets built centuries ago, and so on. When faced with such a situation, some universities make an extra special effort to provide for students with particular disabilities, while others have specialist accommodation. In fact, all universities should have a written policy statement on students with disabilities, setting out what facilities they have, what their attitude is, and what they're prepared to do. But having said that, only you can properly understand the challenges of any disability you have, and so before accepting a place at a university, or even while you're considering applying, if only to raise the university's awareness, it's good to talk to them and find out how much they can and will do for you. The problem is who to talk to. Most universities and some students' unions have a disability advisor who is supposed to know what facilities they already have and will help with further arrangements if necessary or possible. However, all too often this person is a token. Sometimes it's just an extra responsibility given to a secretary. They don't know what the situation is in practice, and they don't have any real authority to change anything. So, given that for any prospective student it's best to visit a university before applying, it's an especially good idea for students with disabilities or special needs to check whether the place really does come up to scratch. In general, the university should provide personal care and assistance, and there are certain key features to look out for if you have a particular disability, including the following. Firstly, if your mobility is impaired, check there are ramps and easy access to all buildings, not just accommodation or teaching rooms. Then, when you're inside, look for clear instructions on fire and emergency procedures for the disabled. Also, make sure there are lifts that work, not the usual ones that seem to be out of order half the time, and check for suitable lavatory facilities. There is a different set of things to look for if you suffer from any kind of hearing impairment. There should be induction loops in lecture theatres, flashing sirens in all rooms, and in accommodation, visual doorbells that light up when somebody calls round to see you. If it is your sight that is impaired, there obviously need to be braille translators of books and documents. In all buildings, the stairs, floors, doorways and windows must have clear markings, and there also have to be special fire and emergency procedures for you. If you suffer from dyslexia, you will need a computer for general use and in exams. And as exams may take you longer to complete, you should be allowed extra time in which to do so. This applies to work in general too. There are, of course, many other possible health difficulties that you may suffer from, such as diabetes, epilepsy, or heart conditions. If this is the case, check the availability of access to appropriate treatment, including medication and/or therapy. Finally, make sure that in the event of an emergency, it is clear what you and other people who may be involved have to do. So you were both on last year's orientation course then. How did it go?
I loved it. The activities were well organised and I met people from all over the world.
Yes, it was useful.
And you think I should sign up for this year's course?
Yes, definitely. Apart from being fun, it really does prepare you for all the things you have to do in your first couple of weeks. In fact, one of the most useful things was chatting to people who'd already been there for a year, so-called senior students. They'd been on the orientation course the year before last and recommended it to us. Oh, and there was a great atmosphere at the formal dinner too. It was so colourful with people in their traditional dress from Asia, Africa, South America. It was one of the high points of the whole week.
That was right at the end, of course. The first thing they did on the Monday was take us on a guided tour of the Students' Union.
And after that, they took us round the city centre, showing us things like the bus station, the main shop.
And the best pubs.
Right, so it was very worthwhile.
Yes, though maybe they could have taken us to a better nightclub. The music at the place we went to was lousy.
That's a matter of taste, surely. Well, anyway, the next day they showed us round everything on the campus.
And believe me, it was everything. We must have walked miles. I could have done with less information on every building in sight, given that I'll probably never need to go into half of them, and a bit more on places everyone's likely to use at some time or other, like the sports block, the health centre, the bicycle and car parks.
Which reminds me, there was an afternoon session on how to drive in this country, which seemed to me a bit weird, for a university course.
I suppose it's because there have been accidents involving students who aren't used to people driving on the left. I was there, actually.
How was it?
Well, I must say I was a bit disappointed. There were some useful driving tips, but it might have been more helpful if it had included stuff for pedestrians. How to avoid getting run over, for example.
You didn't go to the session on safety, then?
No.
Well, apparently that dealt with road safety for pedestrians, along with lots of other aspects, of course. I wasn't there myself, but that might be something worth going to, Julia.
I like the sound of the whole thing. Tell me, what's the accommodation like? Do you have a room to yourself, or do you have to share? What do you have to take with you?
For the orientation course, you'll have an individual room in one of the halls of residence. That'll be a different hall from the one you're booked into for the year, but they're both on the campus, so you won't have far to go.
And you won't have to take much with you. The room will have chairs, table, wardrobe, bed, mattress, blankets, sheets and so on.
Take a warm coat or jacket, though. It may well rain, and it's unlikely to reach even 20 degrees in late September.
But it shouldn't drop below about 10, at least during the day, which is something, I suppose.
Right. Now, I know they can't do much about the weather, but did you have the feeling that they were looking after you on the course?
Yes, we did. There were some little touches that showed they'd thought about what it was like to be starting a course of study abroad.
Such as?
Well, it's just a small example, but they gave us free email access to contact people at home. 30 minutes, if I remember correctly.
Actually, I think it was 20.
Yes, you're right. I was on for over half an hour and paid for an extra 10 or 15 minutes. Not that it was much.
Emails don't take long to write anyway.
No, they don't.
So, just one more thing. The timetable. When does the course actually start and finish?
Well, a lot of people get there on the Sunday, though you'd have to find a room for an extra night, as the course accommodation is only booked from the Monday, when things get going.
Then they'll keep you busy all week until the dinner on the Friday.
And that's it, is it?
Yes, there's nothing after that.
Though most people stay over till Saturday, partly to recover from the party, but also because they can then move straight into their permanent rooms.
I think I'll do that. Well, thanks a lot for all your advice. I'm sure I'll enjoy the course.
I wish I could go on this year's too.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this short talk on the subject of fireworks. Now, fireworks, as I'm sure many of you know, were invented in China, though there has long been disagreement as to exactly when, or even in which century. The consensus nowadays, though, is that it was in the 6th, as there is considerable evidence of war rockets being made then. We also know that fireworks were in use by the 7th century in Arabia, where they were called Chinese arrows, reflecting their military potential. It then took a long time for them to spread to Europe. In fact, it wasn't until the 1200s that fireworks made their appearance there. The basic ingredients of fireworks have changed little to this day. Their explosive capacity comes mainly from black powder, also known as gunpowder, which is produced from a mixture of charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate. A modern aerial firework, the kind used nowadays in big public displays, not the small rocket type that you might remember from your childhood, is normally made in the form of a shell, often a sphere, about the size of a peach. Inside the shell are a number of stars, surrounded by black powder, and running through the centre of the round shell is a charge that makes the firework explode when it reaches the desired altitude. This is known as the bursting charge. When this explodes, it ignites the outside of the stars, which begin to burn with bright showers of sparks. Since the explosion throws the stars in all directions, you get the huge sphere of sparkling light that is so familiar at firework displays. A shell of this kind is launched from a 75mm diameter mortar, which in some ways resembles the type used by the military. The mortar is a steel, or increasingly for safety reasons, shatterproof plastic pipe. This is likely to be 500mm long and sealed at one end. The other end is aimed at the sky, and at the bottom of the pipe, below the shell, is placed a cylinder containing black powder. This has a long fuse, which projects out of the tube. When this is lit, it quickly burns down to the lifting charge, which explodes to launch the shell. In so doing, it also lights the shell's fuse. The shell's fuse burns while the shell rises to its correct altitude and then ignites the bursting charge so it explodes. More complicated shells are divided into sections and burst in 2 or 3 phases. Shells like this are called multi-break shells. They may contain stars of different colours and compositions to create softer or brighter light, more or less sparks, etc. Some shells contain explosives designed to crackle in the sky, or whistles that explode outward with the stars. The sections of a multi-break shell are ignited by different fuses, and the bursting of one section ignites the next. The shells must be assembled in such a way that each section explodes in sequence to produce a distinct, separate effect. The pattern that an aerial shell paints in the sky depends on the arrangement of stars inside the shell. For example, if the stars are equally spaced in a circle, with black powder inside the circle, you will see an aerial display of smaller star explosions equally spaced in a circle. To create a specific figure in the sky, for instance a heart shape, you create an outline of the figure in stars inside the shell. Then you place explosive charges inside those stars to blow them outward into the shape of a large heart. Each charge has to be ignited at exactly the right time, or the whole thing is spoiled. Many other shapes have particular names, like the willow. This is formed by stars that fall in the shape of willow tree branches, spreading a little to the side and then downwards. The high charcoal composition of the stars makes them long-burning, so they may even stay visible until they hit the ground. The ring shell is fairly basic. It is produced by stars exploding outwards to produce a symmetrical ring of coloured lights. More complex is the pattern created by the palm, which contains large comets or charges in the shape of a solid cylinder. These travel outwards, explode, and then curve downwards, like the limbs of a palm tree. The serpentine, the last one for now, is different again. When this one bursts, it sends small tubes of incendiaries scattering outwards in random paths, which may culminate in exploding stars. It can be quite spectacular.
Good morning.
Hi.
How can I help you?
I'm looking for information about travelling to France. I'm studying in Nice next year and need to go there in September. I'm thinking of driving, so I guess it's either through the channel or by ferry. I think the ferry's a lot slower, isn't it?
Indeed it is. It takes around 9 hours from London to Paris, including the overland bits. And usually it's more expensive too, unless you book well ahead of time. Then sometimes the ferry's more affordable.
How much does it cost?
Well, when you take the train and the ferry now, you must buy your tickets separately.
Actually, I'd prefer to take the channel. How much does that cost?
That depends on your travel date and availability of tickets, but you can expect to pay about £50 each way for the car, in addition to your passenger fares.
It's not cheap.
No. Will you be using your car a lot while you're in France?
Not really. But I'll have a lot of luggage, so it seems like the easiest way. Besides, I hate flying.
Driving is never the easiest way to get from the UK to France, I'm afraid. And of course, your steering wheel will be on the wrong side when you get there. If you're not going to need your car when you arrive, may I suggest leaving it at home and travelling by train? It's much faster, more affordable, and you can take as much luggage as you need. There aren't limits.
Oh, I didn't know that about the luggage. That's good. It would certainly be more relaxing, I suppose. OK, tell me about the train.
It's definitely the most popular option these days. Eurostar has now captured over 70% of the London to Paris market from the airlines. And maybe this has something to do with the fact that 92.4% of Eurostar trains run on time, against just 65% of flights on the same routes. From central London to central Paris, Eurostar is faster than flying as well.
And the Eurostar is what exactly? A train company?
Oh, sorry. The Eurostar is the high-speed passenger train that runs from London to Paris via the Channel Tunnel. Eurostar can reach 186 miles per hour, and the journey takes just 2 hours 15 minutes.
All right, so it's easy to get to Paris, but what about Nice? It's a fair bit farther.
Yes, but it couldn't be easier. There are two main options. You can leave London at 7:27 in the morning, then transfer in Paris to catch the TGV train at 11:46, which takes about 5.5 hours, and be in Nice in time for an evening meal. Or you can take any Eurostar to Paris in time to catch the 22:25 from Paris, which arrives in Nice at 8:54. It's a longer journey, but many people prefer the convenience of travelling overnight.
Yes, that appeals to me. About how much does the overnight journey cost?
The example I've pulled up on the computer now costs £135 return, but sometimes it's lower, as low as £97. I'll write down a couple of website addresses for you, and you can search for various times and fares on your own.
Thanks, that's great. Oh, one more thing. I'll need a single fare because I won't be returning for a while. Is that going to be more expensive?
No, don't worry. Singles are approximately half of the return fare, though this wasn't true several years ago when it wasn't uncommon for a return to be cheaper than a single.
OK, this sounds good. But what about flying? Is that an option?
If you aren't going to opt for taking the train, flying is another good option. While the train's the fastest way to travel from London to Paris, you can actually save time by opting to fly from London to the south of France.
I guess there's an airport in Nice, isn't there?
Yes, the Nice Côte d'Azur airport. It's about 7 kilometres from the centre of Nice. Since it's the third most important airport in France, after Charles de Gaulle and Orly in Paris, there's no shortage of flights.
Oh. Do you know exactly how long it takes?
2 hours.
That's quick.
Yes, but you need to consider that you'll lose time checking in and waiting to collect luggage and such. And of course, there's a baggage allowance.
True. All right. Thanks very much for your help. I've got a lot to think about now.
No problem at all. Feel free to come back if you have more questions.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining me on our monthly excursion to visit new architectural and city planning developments in our city of Birmingham. Today, as you can see, we're here at the development site of The Cube, and its construction is well underway. Indeed, the year ahead will be an exciting year for Birmingham Development Company and its construction arm, Buildability, as the construction of The Cube, the most spectacular building in Birmingham, continues at speed. This new building, valued at over £100 million, has been designed by the internationally renowned architects Make. Their design team, led by Ken Shuttleworth, has created a 17-storey cube aimed at providing a spectacular contrast to the increasing number of towers appearing on the Birmingham cityscape. The complex 142-week building programme that will transform the Birmingham skyline upon its completion is currently over halfway through its development. The building will continue to rise over the coming year, with each floor taking 2 to 3 weeks to complete. As you can see to your right, the first shipment of the special gold anodised cladding that will adorn the cube has now arrived on site, and from February, the glistening golden exterior will begin to be installed, bringing the unique building to life. Late summer will see the topping out of the concrete frame of the cube structure, with the intricate metallic fretwork screen beginning to take shape in the early autumn. What has been accomplished to date in the city's regeneration has been nothing short of amazing. Yet we hope to set a new benchmark for developments in Birmingham. The Cube will bring forward a new standard of architecture and a building which will not only be Birmingham's most striking waterside location, but also one which is identifiable around the world. The Cube breaks all the boundaries of what has been achieved in Birmingham so far. The finished cube will be a mixed-use building. It will house the city's first rooftop restaurant with panoramic views, whilst a boutique hotel and residential apartments below will feature internal views over the twisting atrium. Further down, high-specification Grade A office space is planned, with more exclusive retail and waterside restaurants at the base. The mailbox has already raised the bar in the quality and calibre of our architecture, and the retail offerings, worldwide brand names, and stylish restaurants have given Birmingham a contemporary profile, rivalling the capitals of Europe. From the outset, the Cube's design team sought to create a new landmark building for Birmingham, which fits into its context and which draws people in. Lined with coloured glass and with an exterior clad in shimmering metal fretwork, the Cube has visible links to Birmingham's heritage in engineering and jewellery manufacture. It was essential that the building created a strong visual presence, immediately identifiable as a gateway to the canal and city centre area to the north. Our city is a city of the future, and as a futuristic building with phenomenal foresight in style and design, the Cube is indicative of our plans in how we see Birmingham developing. The Cube will help to elevate us onto a global stage. Now, let's go and have a look at the progress of the entrance gateway.
Thomas, let's not go to the lab. Let's just stay here in the student lounge and drink tea and review the chapter.
You know we can't do that. We've a responsibility to turn up and make sure our tutor has understood the week's lectures. If we don't go, no one will ever even realise she's got the theories all muddled up.
Oh, really?
Sophie, it's awful. Marlena just opens her mouth and I'm confused. Really,
Marlena's our tutor.
Yeah, I gathered that.
You lot have got no manners. I was in the middle of saying something. She'll say things that make no sense whatsoever, and I'm thinking I've misunderstood something, and I'm looking around the room, and everyone has these looks on their faces of...
disbelief and merriment.
Maybe you do, Thomas, but we're not all geniuses. Really, I'll be so worried that I've got it all wrong. Then people start asking questions and by, we figure out that she's mixed something up.
That's too bad. It's not a good situation at all.
But surely you're exaggerating a bit, Lynn.
No, it's awful. I don't know how she got through her undergraduate studies, much less got accepted as a postgrad here. You'd think our professor would have some idea about her abilities.
Marlena's an unusual name. Is she English?
She's Spanish, David. She's got a really strong accent.
Really, that's a lot of the problem, I think. I don't think she's thick. She just doesn't communicate very well. I'm not sure she understands us completely, especially when someone's joking around. And we do tease her a bit, I must admit.
What a nightmare. I'd hate to have you in my class if I was a tutor, Tom.
As long as you're clever, Sophie, you'd have nothing to worry about.
But you've just said she's not thick.
I think I've met her, actually. I think we had a class together maybe last year. She was really shy and quiet, hardly spoke the whole term. But she was always smiley and friendly. She seemed nice, actually, and I think she got one of the highest marks in the class. Maybe you've all picked on her so much that she's so nervous that she can't think clearly. Ever think of that?
But we don't need to babysit. We need help. It's a difficult subject.
Has anyone ever gone up and asked her for help individually?
Yes, actually, I have. I couldn't understand one of the formulas in the first chapter. The theory about why it worked just made no sense to me. So I went and asked her about it, and she cleared it right up. She was very helpful. She's not thick, I already said that.
She's just so much fun to torment, right?
Yep, that's it.
Lynn, if you're having trouble with something, why don't you make an appointment to meet with her individually and see if she can help you that way? Maybe you'd see a different side of her. I reckon she just hates getting up in front of the class, and I can hardly blame her.
Yes, I could try that, I suppose.
Guys, the tutors aren't old academics who've been teaching for 30 years. They're just like us, 2 years down the road if we're clever enough to continue with our education. I know I'd be mortified to get up in front of you lot, and I don't think I'll feel that differently in a couple of years' time. You know, we're far more experienced as students than they are as teachers.
You're right, David. Really, it's more like one of our mates is trying to help us out. But you know, our mates aren't so frightened of us.
Yeah, but you aren't so horrible to your mates, are you?
Hello there. Can I have your attention, please? We've got a lot to cover today and we need to get started. If you recall, last week we discussed the AIDS epidemic and its effect on healthcare systems in the countries with the highest incidence. Well, today I'm going to speak about another significant disease that is rather closely associated with the AIDS epidemic, tuberculosis. In the UK, active tuberculosis, otherwise known as TB, was common in the 19th century, the old consumption of romantic novels. Since then, better living conditions, better nutrition, immunisation and effective treatments in the 20th century have all combined to make TB uncommon in the UK today. However, TB is still common in developing countries and parts of Eastern Europe. It causes more deaths worldwide than any other infectious disease, about 3 million per year. This is a tragic statistic, since TB is now generally a curable disease. Overall, 1/3 of the world's population is currently infected with the bacteria that cause TB. However, people infected with TB bacilli will not necessarily become sick with the disease. The immune system walls off the TB bacilli, which, protected by a thick waxy coat, can lie dormant for years. It's estimated that 5 to 10% of people who are infected with TB bacilli, but who are not infected with HIV, become sick or infectious at some time during their life. Left untreated, each person with active TB disease will infect on average between 10 and 15 people every year. There are certain risk factors that make certain people more likely to become ill with TB. When people's immune systems are weakened, their chances of becoming sick are greater, for example, due to HIV infection, immune-suppressing treatment, or alcohol or drug addiction. Age is also a factor, with babies, young children, and the elderly being most susceptible. In addition, poor nutrition and lack of vitamin D are linked to TB. Finally, TB is more common in certain environments, such as among homeless people, among prisoners, in large cities, and in more impoverished areas. Until 50 years ago, there were no medicines to cure TB. Finding medicines to cure TB was a tremendous breakthrough. But now, strains that are resistant to a single drug have been documented in every country surveyed. What's more, strains of TB resistant to all major anti-TB drugs have emerged. Drug-resistant TB is caused by inconsistent or partial treatment, when patients do not take all their medicines regularly for the required period, because they start to feel better, because doctors and health workers prescribe the wrong treatment regimens, or because the drug supply is unreliable. A particularly dangerous form of drug-resistant TB is multi-drug-resistant TB, abbreviated as MDR-TB, which is defined as the disease caused by TB bacilli resistant to at least the two most powerful anti-TB drugs. Rates of MDR-TB are high in some countries, especially in the former Soviet Union, and threaten TB control efforts. While drug-resistant TB is generally treatable, it requires extensive chemotherapy, up to 2 years of treatment, with second-line anti-TB drugs. These second-line drugs are more costly than first-line drugs and produce adverse drug reactions that are more severe, though still manageable. The recent emergence of extensively drug-resistant TB, called XDR-TB, particularly in settings where many TB patients are also infected with HIV, poses a serious threat to TB control, and confirms the urgent need to strengthen basic TB control and to apply the new WHO guidelines for the management of drug-resistant TB.
Hi Laurel, it's Jason. How are you?
Jason, so glad you called. I'm fine. You must have got my message on your answer phone. I wanted to know if you were free tomorrow to go to the opening of a Gaudi exhibition.
Yes, I heard about it and thought of you straight away.
So you're free tomorrow?
Yes. What time do you want to go?
Well, I have a class at college in the morning until 11:15. Wait, no, 11:30. So any time after then.
I have a lecture until about 12:15. Well, that works perfectly. Do you want me to come pick you up?
No, you're much closer to the gallery than I am.
Which gallery is it?
The Tate, which is really good because I can get there pretty easily by tube.
Oh, right. Okay. Where do you want to meet and at what time?
If I leave when I finish my class, I can probably make the 11:55 tube. That should get me into central London in about 25 minutes.
I can come to the tube to meet you by 12:30.
It's probably easier to meet at the Tate. The tube is pretty quiet at that time, not the usual rush of people, so I should be okay. And they've installed a new device in the lift for wheelchairs, so I can get to the street without having to wait for long. Do you remember the old lift?
Yes, it was horrible. It made that loud clanking noise, and the smell would make anyone pass out.
The new lift is quicker, and the wheels of the chair lock into a safety system that allows you, and whoever else is in there with you, more room. It's a lot quicker.
That's a relief. Okay, so where are we meeting?
How about at the ticket office at the Tate?
If I get there first, do you want me to buy you a ticket?
No, I get a concession and need to show my card.
Lucky you. How much do you pay?
About £10 for major exhibitions on Tuesdays.
Oh, that's pretty good. The normal price is another £5. Hang on. Did you say Tuesdays?
Yes. Tomorrow's Tuesday.
Yes, you're right. Why did I think it was Wednesday? Oh, because our lecture times have all changed this week, and it's put me off. OK, hang on. I have no class, so I can come and pick you up.
Can your car take my wheelchair?
Yes, I've got the van, so there's plenty of room in the back. What's your address?
It's flat 6, 83 Alexandra Avenue, West Hampstead.
Let me write this down. Flat 6...
Yes, that's 83 Alexandra Avenue.
Alexandra Avenue?
Yes, West Hampstead.
Got it. OK, I'll be there at 12:30. Will you be home by then?
Sure will. Thanks, Jason. See you tomorrow.
OK, bye.
Good morning and welcome to the Bruna Boyne Visitor Centre. Newgrange is one of the finest examples, not only in Ireland but in Western Europe, of the type of structure known as a passage tomb. It was probably built about 3000 BC. That makes it around 500 years older than the pyramids in Giza in Egypt and 1,000 years older than Stonehenge in England. Before we start our tour, let me tell you a little bit about what you'll be seeing. Newgrange consists of a long, narrow passage and chamber which, if we imagine looking down on it from above, would have the shape of a cross. In the two rooms of the chamber forming the arms of the cross, you will see large stone basins, which are a feature of many Paleolithic Irish tombs, though researchers can only guess about what their purpose would have been. Outside of the tomb, in front of the entrance to the passage, sits the large carved entrance stone, which I'm sure you've all seen pictures of in magazines or textbooks. After all, this stone is about the most famous example in the entire repertory of Paleolithic rock art. The spirals and zigzag lines covering it are strikingly beautiful. Some of the large curbstones lining the inside of the passage are also decorated, although they're not as famous. An 11-metre-high circular mound made of stone covers the tomb, making it appear even larger and more imposing than it is, especially from a distance. The final thing I want to mention before we set off is the light box, which is an opening that you will see in the roof of the passage above the entrance, which allows the light of the sun to enter and illuminate the tomb at sunrise on the day of the winter solstice. Actually, I want to tell you a bit more about the winter solstice at Newgrange. The alignment of the tomb to the winter solstice sunrise is without a doubt one of the most amazing features of Newgrange, and has led researchers to speculate that the site may not have been only a place of burial, but may have had broader cultural importance as a place of spiritual or scientific significance. Indeed, to witness the winter solstice sunrise illuminate the tomb is breathtaking, and still has a deep resonance with people today. The general public are welcome to gather at Newgrange for the sunrise on the mornings around the solstice, but access to the chamber itself is limited on the solstice morning and is decided in advance by the lottery. It's proved to be extremely popular. Last year there were 25,349 entries for the solstice lottery's 50 places. But don't despair, in recent years the event has been transmitted live by the Office of Public Works to hundreds of thousands of people around the world via internet and television stations. This year's draw will take place on September 30th, and the winning applicants will be notified by mid-October. To assure that everything is fair and square, children from 3 local schools will choose the winning applicants. 50 names will be drawn, and each of the lucky winners can bring a guest. But of course, 100 people won't fit in the tomb. We have room for 10 lottery winners and their guests in the chamber on each of the 5 mornings around the winter solstice. If you're interested in signing up, you can do so at the information desk on your way out.
Hello, Dr. Smith. Can I come in?
Yes, please, sit down. I won't be a minute.
Thank you.
You would be Mr. Garrison?
Yes, Peter Garrison.
Okay, what seems to be the problem, Mr. Garrison?
I've been having some pains in my stomach and it's been bothering me for nearly 2 weeks. Actually, 10 days to be exact.
What happened at the time the pain started?
I was having dinner with my family, and I thought I must have eaten something that didn't sit well in my stomach.
Then what did you do?
I drank a glass of Alka-Seltzer to ease the pain, but it didn't work.
Do you remember what it was that you ate at the time the pain started?
Yes. I was eating pumpkin soup with bread, and then we had roast chicken, potatoes, some vegetables, and afterwards dessert. I think it was chocolate pudding with cream.
That's quite a lot of food.
Yes, well, I do like to eat.
Do you do any form of exercise?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes I might go for a walk.
How often?
Maybe once a month.
And for how many hours?
Oh, no, not a long walk. I might walk to the local shops instead of taking my car.
How far away is the shop?
About 5 minutes.
By car?
No, on foot.
Well, I think the problem here is that you're quite overweight from the looks of things. You don't exercise and you eat far too much. So I'd say the issue you're having with your stomach is something that was inevitable. I'm going to suggest a few things, but you have to comply. Otherwise, there's no point in me going on.
So, it's serious?
It will be if you don't take steps to change your lifestyle.
Oh, what should I do?
First of all, I'm going to give you a list of what you can and can't eat for the next month. I want you to follow this quite strictly. Do you understand?
Yes.
For breakfast, I want you to have a cup of hot water and lemon juice.
Is that all?
No, let me finish.
Sorry.
After 20 minutes, I want you to have a freshly squeezed juice of either fruit or vegetables. Then eat either cereal without sugar and with low-fat milk, or if you don't like cereal, then have some toast. You can use honey or jam that is organic only. But I don't want you to use any butter and no sugar or salt.
For a whole month?
Yes. Then, for a mid-morning snack, you can have 2 pieces of fruit. Lunch will be 2 pieces of brown organic bread with either avocado or hummus instead of butter and salad. Then in the afternoon, you can have a handful of nuts, but not too many. Okay so far?
Well, it all sounds a bit hard. You know, it doesn't seem like much.
For dinner, you are allowed a small quantity of about 100 grams of either brown rice or pasta with steamed or baked fish and vegetables. If you must have dessert, you can either have another piece of fruit or some low-fat organic yogurt.
Where do I buy all this organic food?
There's a shop in the high street, and I want you to walk there. It's just opposite the town hall.
Okay.
I want you to be 100% dedicated to this diet.
Is that it?
Yes, and I'll see you in a month's time to reassess you.
Okay, Doctor. Well, I'll see you in a month.
Oh, and absolutely no alcohol, coffee, or cigarettes.
Oh, dear.
Last week, we focused on the creative side of photography, composition, etc. But this week, it's time to get a bit more technical. Today, our focus is going to be on exposure. The term exposure simply refers to the amount of light your film is exposed to, or, put another way, the amount of light you allow to strike your film. A good photographer has got to know 2 things. 1, how much light is required to capture a particular image, and 2, how to control the light reaching the film. The former is usually determined by the camera's inbuilt light meter, and the latter is taken care of by means of the aperture and shutter settings. Essentially, exposure time is controlled by opening the aperture and allowing light to pass through it for a fixed duration. Aperture sounds like a fancy word, but in simple terms, it is basically a hole whose size can be varied to allow more or less light to pass through it. Aperture size is described in f numbers, with each f number being half as bright as the previous one. The difference in value between one full f number and the next is known as a stop. The smaller f number, the larger the aperture and the greater the amount of light being let pass through it. Shutter controls also play a crucial role in determining the exposure for a shot. The shutter prevents light from reaching the film until the instant of exposure when a picture is being taken. Then it opens for a predetermined amount of time, allowing light to pass through the aperture and onto the film. Shutter speed is expressed in seconds or fractions of a second. A 1 unit change to the shutter speed is also known as a stop, and a change of 1 stop to the shutter speed has a similar outcome to a 1-stop aperture size adjustment. Overexposure, as the name suggests, occurs when you give your film more exposure to light than is necessary to capture a clear image. Telltale signs of overexposure include pictures dominated by pale or light shades and poor washed-out colours. Underexposure, then, occurs when there is not enough light and produces the opposite result, a dark image with poor detail and shadows. Before we go on to look at how to ascertain the correct exposure settings for a particular shot, let's take a short break.